In a time when magic flowed through every river and whispered in every forest, the Forgotten Realms knew peace under the rule of the Council of Light. But legends tell of a darkness that slept beneath the mountains, waiting for the stars to align and the blood moon to rise. The Shadow King was not always a creature of darkness. Born as Malachar, he was once the most brilliant scholar of the Arcane Academy, a man who believed knowledge could save the world from suffering. His fall began with a single question: what if death itself could be conquered? The forbidden texts he discovered spoke of the abyss, a realm where souls wandered eternally, and of a ritual that could bind those souls to the living world. The night Malachar performed the ritual, the sky itself seemed to mourn. He sacrificed what he loved most, believing the cost would be worth the power to end all death and disease. But the abyss does not give without taking everything in return. When dawn broke, Malachar was gone. In his place stood the Shadow King, his eyes burning with crimson fire, his heart replaced by a void that hungered for the light of every living soul. The Council of Light sent their champions to stop him, but one by one they fell. The Shadow King raised an army from the fallen, binding their spirits to skeletal forms that obeyed his every command. Villages burned, forests withered, and the rivers ran cold. Within a single season, half the realms bowed to his rule or lay in ruins. But darkness, no matter how powerful, always births its own resistance. In the farming village of Thornhaven, a young blacksmith named Kira refused to flee when the shadow armies marched. She had no magic, no noble blood, only the strength of her hands and a stubborn belief that evil could be stopped by those who dared to stand. Kira was not alone. A wandering elven ranger arrived at Thornhaven the same week, tracking the shadow creatures that had destroyed his homeland. His name was Elander, and though centuries old, grief still shadowed his ancient eyes. He had lost his entire clan to the Shadow King's first assault. The third to join them came from the most unexpected place: the Arcane Academy itself. Master Aldrich had been Malachar's teacher, and the guilt of not seeing the darkness growing in his student's heart had nearly broken him. But Aldrich knew the old magic, the pure spells from before the abyss was ever discovered, and he believed redemption was still possible. Together, this unlikely fellowship discovered a truth the Council of Light had missed. The Shadow King could not be killed by force alone. The ritual that transformed Malachar had bound his soul to an artifact, a crown forged from the darkness of the abyss itself. As long as the crown existed, the Shadow King would endure. The crown rested in the Black Citadel, the fortress Malachar had raised at the heart of the conquered territories. To reach it, they would have to cross the ashen wastes, survive the forest of screaming souls, and face legions of the undead. Their journey began at dawn. Kira carried a blade she had forged herself, tempered in blessed water Aldrich had consecrated. Elander moved like a shadow through the trees, his arrows fletched with phoenix feathers that burned shadow creatures on contact. Aldrich walked with his staff, murmuring protective wards that shimmered around them like soap bubbles. The ashen wastes tested their endurance. The sand was not sand but the remains of cities the Shadow King had incinerated, and every step whispered with the voices of the dead. The forest of screaming souls was worse. Trees grew with faces twisted in agony, their branches reaching like claws. Spirits attacked from every shadow, but Aldrich's wards held, and Elander's enchanted arrows found their marks. Kira discovered her own strength when a wraith lunged for the mage. Her blessed blade cut through the spirit like sunlight through mist. They reached the Black Citadel under the blood moon, the same celestial sign that had witnessed Malachar's transformation. The Shadow King knew they were coming. He had been watching through the eyes of ravens and the whispers of shadows. Inside the throne room, the Shadow King waited. His voice was like stones grinding together, empty of all warmth. He offered them a choice: join him and live forever in service, or die and join his army anyway. Kira answered by raising her sword. Elander's arrows flew. Aldrich's staff blazed with ancient light. The battle shook the citadel's foundations. Shadow creatures poured from every corridor, but the fellowship fought as one. Aldrich's magic carved paths of light through the darkness. Elander's arrows never missed, and Kira's blade sang with holy fire. Yet for every creature they destroyed, The Shadow King remained untouched, protected by the crown's power. Then Aldrich did something none of them expected. The old mage stepped forward, lowering his staff, and spoke not with magic but with memory. He called out to Malachar, reminding him of the young scholar who had wanted to heal the world, who had loved learning and laughter. He spoke of the terrible loneliness that comes from choosing power over love. For a moment, the crimson light in the Shadow King's eyes flickered. Somewhere deep within the darkness, a fragment of Malachar still existed, trapped and screaming. That moment was enough. Kira lunged forward and struck not at the Shadow King but at the crown itself. Her blessed blade shattered the artifact, and the abyss screamed. The darkness unraveled. Shadow creatures dissolved into mist. The black citadel began to crumble. The Shadow King fell to his knees, the hood falling back to reveal Malachar's face, aged and scarred but finally his own again. In his last moments, Malachar thanked them. He had been aware, trapped inside his own body for years, forced to watch as the abyss used his form to bring death. The crown's destruction freed him but also severed his life force. Aldrich held his former student as Malachar's soul finally departed, not to the abyss but to the natural rest he had sought to deny so long ago. With the Shadow King gone, light returned to the forgotten realms. Forests bloomed again, rivers flowed warm, and the survivors began rebuilding. The Council of Light was reformed, though now it included representatives from all peoples. Farmers, rangers, mages, and smiths alike. Kira returned to Thornhaven, but she was no longer just a blacksmith. Villages sought her counsel, and she helped train others to defend against darkness, teaching that courage did not require magic or noble birth. Elander wandered the forests once more, replanting groves and guiding lost travelers, finding peace in renewal rather than revenge. Aldrich reopened the Arcane Academy with new principles, that knowledge must be tempered with wisdom, and that some doors are sealed for good reason. The legend of their victory spread across every tavern and town square. It reminded the people of the realms that even the deepest darkness could be challenged, that redemption was possible even for those who had fallen far, and that the greatest power was not found in ancient rituals but in the bonds between those who chose to stand together. The crown of the Shadow King was never reforged. Its shards were scattered across the world, buried in places where no one would think to look, guarded by those who remembered the cost of seeking power over life and death. And in the halls of the Arcane Academy, Master Aldrich made sure every student learned the story of Malachar, not as a warning to fear knowledge, but as a reminder that the pursuit of power without compassion leads only to an abyss no magic can escape. The Forgotten Realms would face other threats in the years to come, but they would never forget the lesson learned in the shadow of the Black Citadel. That light is strongest not when it stands alone, but when even the smallest flame refuses to be extinguished. If you enjoyed this tale of magic, redemption, and unlikely heroes, make sure to subscribe to Myth Harbor for more epic stories from realms both forgotten and legendary. Hit that like button if the Shadow King's tale moved you, and let us know in the comments which legend you'd like us to explore next. Until the next story calls us, may your own journey be filled with courage and light.